So Hawaii is predominantly land rich, cash poor. I always say that because uh, you buy these houses which are on average much more expensive than you would elsewhere and compared to your wages. And a lot of people have all their equity or most of their equity kind of tied up, or their assets kind of tied up in their house. So does that present any unique challenges or circumstances? I know this is where probably the trust kind of comes in big time, is with most of your assets in the house, you really want to have that trust, right?
Yeah, I really think it's a missed opportunity when people don't put the thought into what's going to happen to that house. I met with a family yesterday where, the at the end of the day, they're going to have to sell it. And there's emotions in it. It's the house we grew up in, but the kids are all grown. There's two on the mainland. There's one here.
Mhm.
He has his own house. So this family house that mom and dad built, and he's telling me stories about they built the room in the back, and he and his high school friends, put up the
Right.
framing, all this kind of stuff. And you're like, if you haven't thought about what's really going to happen to that, you haven't planned for it, it can fall apart pretty
Mhm.
quickly, and then you lose it. And in Hawaii, who doesn't want to have the house in Hawaii
Right.
because it's unique, it's limited, and they're just such high value, sentimental value, money value, market value. The trust can really help you plan for what's going to happen after you're gone, because you
Mhm.
may have a situation where you've got competing interests of the beneficiaries. But
Right.
it's your house, if you want to set up the rules to a certain extent, a lot of people then say, well, I don't want to, it's their problem, let them handle it. I don't want to
Mhm.
control from beyond the grave, and I'm like, I get
Mhm.
that. So these are the discussions that we have with clients to really go over priorities. What can we do? A
Mhm.
lot of people don't know their options. A trust can really extend, I tell people it's an extension of you after you're gone, as far as what are the rules for the house, who you can set up a residence trust,
Mhm.
which says who gets to live in the house. If nobody's living in the house, can we have like a long-term rental? And then how's the rental income going to be split? You can set up a situation where you have three kids. One of them lives with you, the other two don't, and adults.
Mhm.
Um, Child lives with you, maybe with or without their own family, and then the other two are on the mainland or something, or just in their own properties. If you pass away and it's a three-way split, there's no guarantee that the one who lives there and it's their house, gets to stay.
Mhm.
Unless you can set up a trust that says, sure, if that's the situation, I want this son, I'm just three
Yeah.
sons, I want this son and his family to be able to live there. But if he's going to live there, he has to pay rent
Mhm.
to the brothers so that they get something. Or he doesn't have to pay rent because he's taking care of us in our old age, and we want him to be able to live there. We want his kids to get through high school at their current
Right.
school, and when that's done, then they can sell it. I mean, the options are endless for how to set it up so that you're not just going with three equal owners
Right.
who end up fighting and forcing a sale. Because I think that's another thing people don't realize. You cannot force people to own property together.
Yeah,
It's like,
that's what I was going to get to. So your example had three people. Let's say
mhm.
you had four, and isn't there sometimes there'll be some verbiage where they need to like agree or majority rules, and then could you end up
Right.
with like a 2-2
Yeah,
split? And
yeah,
what happens
yeah.
there then?
So, I mean, in the trust, you would cover all of this,
Mm,
right? If you're setting up the trust to say, I want my kids to majority rules agree. If
mm.
we don't have, because you might not even have a 2-2 split, you might have a 4-1-1-1-1 split,
Right, right,
One wants to rent it, one wants to sell it, one wants to keep it, but everybody gets to use it as a vacation home.
mm,
One doesn't care.
right.
There's you can have a lot of competing interests. So what do? You set up those rules. You set up timelines. I've
Gotcha.
done that where. So I mean, we're getting really specific here, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
I should have
sorry.
prefaced like none of this is legal
Right,
advice.
right, right. Yes, yes. That's a good. I meant to say at the beginning. None of this
Yeah,
is legal, tax, or
none of
financial
this is
advice.
legal advice or
Okay.
professional. This is just for
Yes.
educational purposes only, informational purposes only. But yeah, it's an example to me of the value of what people in my field do.
Right.
because we've seen, we've seen the fights, we've seen the breakdown, so we're better equipped to help you think of scenarios that you never thought of, didn't realize that could happen, didn't realize I could put controls like that, didn't really, when I start going down this path with people, I can see the light bulbs come on.
Right.
And after a couple of meetings, they start going, well, can I do this? Well, can I
Mhm.
say that? And so a good estate planner is going to also think about the costs of that, because sometimes it's, you know, I've got the 4 kids. The one I'm always like, there's always a kid that lives in the house. I shouldn't say there always is, but that's sometimes the concern that people aren't thinking about.
Mhm.
I want him to be able to live there but he can't afford the property taxes. He's not gonna be able to afford
Mhm.
the costs associated with it. So, what do we do? I'm like, well, you can set up a fund if you have liquid assets that you can leave behind to sort of carry that over. It can all be part of the trust. There's a trust account, there's funds in a trust that are meant to pay for property expenses, not other things. It's meant to pay for property expenses so that the house will be kept up and taken care of. And then whatever designations you made, whether it's at this child's death or after a certain number of years, because you want them to be able to look for a new place to live before it's sold. All of these kinds of rules can be put in place in your trust to cover the contingencies, to cover you can't cover everything.
No, no.
Sometimes things happen, but you can be as prepared as you can be so that we've got family harmony, because it's not up to them. It's not up to the kids. It's up to you. You've set the rules. They're just following it. So yeah, with the Hawaii multi-generational living, sentimental value in these homes, there's ways to preserve it and still set everybody up
Mhm.
to get their fair share. I hear people all the time, I just want to be fair. I just want to be
Right.
fair. And
Right.
there's a lot of different ways to accomplish that.
Yeah, that just as you're talking, I just think of how on the surface, the estate planning is very simple and straightforward, and it can get very complicated very quick. And I think it's a great point to make and reason to seek out somebody like yourself or somebody you trust, somebody you can communicate with, somebody who's going to tell you those options. Whereas, you see in like there's the online you can kind of get these legal documents drafted, and it's fairly cheap and it's appealing, and it keeps it. But I think that's the downside. It keeps it very surface level, and you don't know what to put if you don't know the right question to ask. You know what I mean? And this is where like speaking with somebody like you really, really helps them.
Yeah, you don't know what you don't know. And I mean, I had a simple situation where it was an uncle leaving to 2 nieces, and one of his nieces had a special needs child. So everybody was like, when he passes, his house and his money is going to go to her so she can help to take care of her son. The other niece is well off. She's fine. Everybody like, yay, this is the plan. We're all in
Mhm.
agreement. It's going to be fine. So he did I think it was legal Zoom. Like he did an online simple sort of will. So it had to go through probate, but he put it in backwards where
Oh,
he thought he was naming this niece as the beneficiary, but he named her as the executor, the person representative, and he named both nieces as the beneficiary. And because they didn't quite understand it either, and everybody thought the plan was going to go one way, they kind of sat on it for a while. So if a certain amount of time passes, the option for the second niece to say, oh, no, I don't want it,
mm,
for tax reasons, that option goes out the door. So now we've got 2 beneficiaries instead of the one. And in order for it to get all to this one niece, this person has to take steps that could be taxable to her. And, it just gets complicated.
right.
And it's a simple thing with maybe he just didn't know the terms. Maybe, if it's only as good as the person putting it in. And especially with AI these days too, I've had a lot of people saying like, can't I just start talking to the chat
Yeah.
GPT and be like, create a will for me that's compliant with Hawaii law. And,
Yes. Right.
they get something and they say, okay, well now I want to add a specific thing for my car to go to somebody. I mean, you can do things, but is it going to work? Is it going to be valid? the only way to really know that is to consult with a professional, and definitely to get all the other options and all the other considerations. Most of those online things also only go through plan A. So again, we talked
Right.
about how plan A is plan A.
Hmm.
If there's anything that goes wrong, you could end up in a situation where, people, your cousins are getting something. You're like, what? Why are they getting it? I never would have, obviously you're gone in that scenario, but the results that people just couldn't have imagined because they didn't consult with a professional who does that thinking for you, who has that
Hmm.
experience.
Yeah, and I battle this more than you do in my field because in financial advising or retirement planning, what I do, it's much more conducive to do it yourself. It's actually a lot easier than it would be, the legalese of being an estate plan. And I find the same thing in what I do is, and I think there's plenty of people who are competent and capable of doing it themselves. Until you get tripped up by a certain situation that you didn't plan for, and then things just get all out of whack, and then you got to search for somebody. So I deal with AI has made it's great because it does help people be better at doing do it yourself for advising and their investments and all kinds of things. But I'm selfishly in the opinion you can't be
Yeah.
a trusted person who can ask the right questions.
Professional advice from someone whose job it is to
Right,
know all of the things,
right,
that you don't know, you don't know.
right.
And even, I've run into situations where I think even, and maybe I shouldn't say this, but in the legal field, attorneys who are not trained, who don't have experience in estate planning, sometimes, and not all, but there are some who it's like, oh, it's just a form, and I'll just,
Hmm.
I know the legalese, I know who you're talking about, and I'll just kind of fill in blanks and get you to a result.
Hmm.
Well, it's a result, but is it a good result? So I've had situations where I'm dealing with probates or trust administrations for a will that was drafted by an attorney, but was not an attorney who regularly practices in estate planning.
Mm.
And it's just, I'm like, I don't know what this means. And, they use to my children, and then they put some names in parentheses, but it's not all the kids in the parentheses. So who counts as a child? It can get really weird really fast.
Right.
Uh, and so again, it's someone, Hawaii, there's actually an ethical thing. You're not allowed to say you're certified or
Mm.
specialize in a field.
Mm.
But you practice in a specific area, and so there are folks who transition to estate planning and have been doing that, maybe not their entire careers, but
Mhm.
it's just with the continuing education we get, the updates to tax laws and changes, like, as you know, like some people don't know about the changes to the retirement rules and
Mhm.
are telling people certain things. There are
Right.
some attorneys who don't understand what happens if you don't have a will. There are certain terms for what happens if, like, a child has passed away, then what? They use the wrong terminology, or they reference the wrong thing, or not the wrong thing. They reference something that's not actually what the client wanted, and nobody realized that. So
Mm.
I'm going on a tangent there, but it's
No.
an estate planning attorney who has experience in the field, um, will know about the options, all the things we've been talking about, much more than do it yourself, way more than do it yourself, and even more than an attorney who's maybe just doing it on the side for a friend or something. I have a lot of clients who are like, my will was prepared back in the day from my brother's friend was an attorney, and they just did
Mhm.
it for us as a favor. And then I read them the document, I tell them what it is. They said, oh no, that's not what we want. I'm like, well, it's what it
Right.
says.
Yeah.
The opinions and statements presented on this show are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations. Never make any investment or financial decisions based on information offered on this show without first consulting your financial, legal, or tax advisor. All economic and performance information mentioned on the show is historical in nature and is not indicative of any future results. All indices mentioned on this show are unmanaged and cannot be invested in directly. All information is believed to be from reliable sources. However, we make no representation as to its completeness or accuracy. Lastly, all opinions statements expressed by Jason Cutitta and any guests on the show are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinions of or are endorsed by ToBA Financial. For Jason Cutitta, investment advisory services are offered through ToBA Financial LLC, a registered investment advisor offering advisory services in the state of Hawaii and in other jurisdictions where exempt from registration.